Hi, it's Christy of So to Speak, and welcome back to the So to Speak Closet series. We are in the middle of a mini series that was originally going to be how to get through winter and have guests come on who were going to help us do that. But we're on the brink of spring, which is really exciting. So it's turned more into how to get through life season by season. And I'm so excited to introduce you to our next guest. It is so perfect that she is here as we move into the blossoming season of spring. And her name is Laurie Halter. She is the voice, creator, and host behind the must listen to podcast Carearing. Carearing, Rearing, which gives you a little hint to what the focus is on her podcast, which is that she brings guests on who are female, running households, running businesses, leaders in their field, and raising kids, raising families, and how do they do it? And it's not about juggling and balancing, it's just about how do they do it? What are tips that they give? What are hacks? What are insights? How can you learn from someone else who may be in a different part of the country and feel a sense of connection? Because one thing Laurie really focuses on is connecting women. She is such a huge advocate to help women support each other and to help each other thrive, so that, as Laurie says, we can all learn how and what sets our soul on fire. Please sit back, relax, and enjoy our conversation. Your energy is so contagious.
Oh,
Have
thank
you
you.
always had this energy, like ever since you were a kid, like just this very upbeat, optimistic?
That's so sweet. I've always been an optimist, but it's so interesting. My husband and I talk about this all the time, and my kids talk about this. I used to be like that, so shy and so introverted, and I didn't want to talk. And so, my husband's like, it is fascinating, like that you were that way as a kid, and now all of a sudden as an adult, you're like this out there, don't care. And I don't know, we can go on and on about you. There's all kinds of theories about like trauma, like there's all kinds of things behind the scenes I'm working on. But I mean, essentially at one point I was like, I just felt like I didn't want to be that person anymore. And I just really forced myself to get out there and talk to people. And when you do that, you realize everyone's worried about themselves, right? No one's worried about you. No one cares. So I think the more I realize that no one cares, the more you're able to like just build into who you are. So
And it's
the
so
answer is
true.
no. Like I have not always been this way.
So I would love to start there, just like for anybody who's listening, who, because I'm
Yes.
so floored that you have not always been this way. Anybody who's listening who does want to get their voice out there more,
Yeah.
and what would be like a first step that you would say that you took that?
Yeah. So I think this is such an interesting topic because I think it's two different things, right? The one is just feeling confident enough to get it out there and know, like I was talking about, like everyone's worried about themselves. So the more you are willing to show up as you are, the more authentic you can be, the more people are going to just love you because you're being who you authentically are. So that's so huge. But then the other side is really like, if this is not how you are, that's okay. There's something else that you are bringing to the table. So it's really like figure out what you're bringing to the table and then not exploit, use that to your
Exploit
best advantage.
yourself. Express yourself, as Madonna
Exactly.
said back in the day.
Yes, exactly right.
Yeah,
Yeah. So I
I
think
love that. Yeah.
the moment I started showing up, the moment I kind of was like, I don't really care what people are going to think about how I'm acting or showing up is the moment things start taking off for you because then you're really in the groove of who you truly are.
You
Yeah.
totally, so going back to like the groove of who you truly are and that
Yeah.
genuine authenticity.
Yeah.
I love how you were saying, rephrasing a little bit, but just how you were
Yeah.
talking about like being who you are, and then nobody will care because you're showing up as you are.
Yeah.
So I'm hearing so much too, like if you know why you're showing up and you're clear
Yes.
for yourself, then you'll show
Yes.
up authentically. So there's such a big difference between
Oh my gosh.
showing up, know your intention behind, are you showing up to please, to compare, to appease,
Right.
right?
Yes. No, this is so huge. And I was just talking about this with someone the other day. Like this whole, I hate this whole idea that like women aren't there for women. Like we hear this a lot, right? Like women, there's a social media presence, I'm not going to say her name, but her whole shtick is how like women have bullied her whole career. And I know that happens, but I just feel like I get so much from supporting and encouraging other women. And I feel like that's the vibe I get back. So I really also believe in this whole, like, what you're putting out is what you're going to get back. And so if you're putting out this vibe, like women are out to get you, then yeah, you're probably going to find some women that are out to get you. But if you're putting out this vibe of like, let's all empower and lift each other up, then you're going to find women who empower you and lift you up.
It's so true. And there are two things with that, right? First, you're negatively reinforcing that stigma that we're against each other. And you're also, we all want to be right. We're wired that way. So it's confirmation bias. Like if you think women are out to get you, you're looking for, see, she's out to get me. She's out to get me.
You're exactly right.
So it's like the lens, you just have to kind of switch out.
Yeah. And that's even from the optimism part of it. Like if you're looking for the good, if you're only looking for people that are out to help you, the good in them, they want the best for you, that's what you're going to find. And the same vice versa. It's the same theory in the opposite.
Yes. A good friend of mine gave me these cards.
I love it.
So I'll do like, if I can remember before I have a guest on, or even before the day, I'll just like do a random poll. Like, what's the card for Laurie, you know? And your card was don't.
Oh, I love this stuff.
It's exactly what you're saying. So your card is don't involve yourself with whack shit.
Okay, I first of all love that.
That's your
and
card.
Second of all, I need to get this card set. That's amazing. That is like the best thing I've ever heard.
A shout out to the woman, but I don't know who.
Don't involve yourself with whack
and it's just, and then on the back, she's really funny. Like she's got great humor. And one of the things she says is comparing yourself to others, which it's so easy to fall into the trap, and it's so easy to fall into who's for you, who's against you, but just so with you that,
oh my gosh,
you can speak more to that. Just that idea of once you are clear on why you want to, when you were saying going from introvert to being more out there, once you're more clear on why you want to do that, things start shifting. So can you just speak to like why you wanted to do that? Like why?
Yeah, no, I just remember very clearly, like 9th grade. I mean, I remember this so clear. I just was so tired of kind of being in the background, and I knew there was so much I had to offer. And, you know, such middle school, my kids are going through middle school right now, and it's just such an awkward, difficult stage for everyone. But I went away to a camp, and at the camp, I was like, before I go, I'm going to be the person that I really want to be this whole week. I'm not going to, you know, and I pushed myself out there, and I talked to people, and I let them see who I really was. And by the end of the camp, it was a week-long camp. It was one of the most fun experiences of my life. And I just remember coming back and thinking, if I can just do this, like in my everyday life, I'll probably have the same result. And, you know, I came back and I started expressly looking people in the eye and saying hi, and not worrying so much about myself anymore, but worrying about connecting with the people that I was. And it works. I mean, it's because everyone's looking for connection. Right? Whether you say it or not, everybody is looking for connection. So by like looking people in the eye and saying hi first, you take away that fear of them. They have the same fears you do. And so if you take that fear away, then it all works out from there. So
Laura, it's so insightful. It's so insightful and mature of you at 14, 15 years old to even say, no, I'm going to show up. The fact that you even knew that you were showing up not how you were, because at 14, 15, I feel like so many of us, myself included, was just like in this blur of who am I and who do I have to be? And so I love that you were able to see that. And the connection piece is so key. And I want you to speak to this too, because one thing I do too is I do presentation coaching. And the number one thing I say across the board, whether someone's talking to one person or 500 people, is put your attention on the other person, and your presence, your confidence, your engage, all of it's going to go up. So people are like, how can I be more confident? And it's like, put your attention on the other person. Oh my gosh.
Yes. Yes. Because everyone's just, you know, I tell my kids today, I'm like, if you are ever in a situation where you feel nervous, or you're let's say you're in a crowd of people, you walk into a party. This happens to me all the time. I go to conferences and you walk into a ballroom and there's people everywhere, right? And maybe you don't know anyone. I always tell my kids, look for the one person that looks uncomfortable, because they'll be so excited if you come up and say anything to them. They will immediately be willing and ready to have a conversation with you, because they're looking for someone too.
Yes.
That is going to pull them out of their, pull them out of like being by themselves.
Their self-conscious bubble that we all have, you know. I mean, the person who's jazzing up the room to the extreme is the other spectrum of the self-conscious bubble. So find your space. So I love that. And I love the whole idea, because you're just like, all I see are like sparks out of you, right? You're just like this, and it leads right to the whole idea of setting your soul on fire, which is one of the things that you wanted to talk about. Is that something that you feel drives, like, is that like a core for driving your business and your life and your home? That's such a beautiful.
Yeah, thank you so much. Well, I mean, it always has been, but I hadn't heard it defined in that way. I have my podcast as well, and I had a guest on that one. In fact, Jackie Grillo, I'm going to say her name because she's so amazing, 2-time cancer survivor. And she said, what I've realized, it's just all about what sets your soul on fire. And I was like, oh, set your soul on fire. That's it. It's plugging into whatever that is. And it's going to be different for every single person, but plugging into whatever sets your soul on fire. And I think if you're doing that and it's lighting you up, then that vibe is going to be noticed and reciprocated. So
100%.
My big thing is like, wake up. You and I were talking about the Groundhog's Day. I love it. Like, wake up, find what's going to set your soul on fire and start doing that. And you honestly don't even have to worry about the rest of it. Because if you're doing something that puts you on fire, you're going to get noticed.
People are going to magnetize to it. Absolutely. And I love that you just referenced our previous conversation, because it's such a great segue to your fantastic podcast, Carearing.
Thank you.
By the way, everybody, because it's about how working women who are moms, how they're struggling, how they're doing it in such a real way.
Yes. Thank you.
Careering.
Careering. I love it. Say, okay, trademark that.
I love both right now. I love both of them. But that's what it's about. And so I was fortunate to be on your podcast, and we had a whole conversation about waking up and all that. And we were like, oh my gosh, we have so much more to say. So now it's a continuation.
I love it. Yes, I love it. So everyone listening, come to Carearing to hear Christy, because our episode is fire as well.
It's so great. Yeah. Let's talk about just like what got you started in creating Carearing. And
well, it's really, this whole kind of setting your soul on fire. Like I have owned a PR firm for 20 years, which I'm so blessed and fortunate to have worked for myself. But I really, only a year and a half ago now, I really was like, this isn't really doing it for me. Like, I'm so fortunate to have this career, but I'm so bored. 2 decades in, it's like, I know the players, I know all the strategies, I know the clients, I know the messages. And so I was really searching. I just kept telling my husband, I just feel this restlessness. I just feel restless. And the restlessness was like empowering me. I was looking for something. And so I created Carearing. And it's funny, I look back in my journals and it's like, Google how to start a podcast. Like I had no idea what I was doing. None. And I just did it. And I jumped in and I started interviewing women. And I realized as I interviewed the women that, like, for me, connecting with other women and empowering other women, that is it. So it's not even necessarily a podcast. It's this idea of like a sisterhood is what did it for me. And that's what kind of sets me on fire right now. And so it's funny, even when I podcast for my PR stuff, I'm like, okay, we can talk about that. But what I really want to talk about is career. Like you can tell in my manner, like one to the other.
It's so true. And that you could, and I love how you can feel that difference. I felt a chill when you were talking about that moment. You were like restless and you're like, no, this isn't it. And then all of a sudden you found it.
Yes.
And thank you for admitting it. We hear it all the time, and we hear other people say it. We have to experience not knowing, and we have to experience going in totally blind. Like, I have no idea. I may look like a total moron. I may not, who knows? But I just want to stress the importance of like you having that inner fire already. It helped you get through the concern of being embarrassed or failing. So can you speak to that, just for anybody who's been like wanting to do something and they're kind of nervous about A, B, C, D, like fill in the alphabet, right? How to get past that?
No, I love that idea. I mean, I love that question, because I really do think it's just jump in, right? And so when I started, I have now a different theme song. I have different guests. Like when I started, my guests were my friends, because I didn't know what I was doing. Like I didn't have a microphone. I still don't have a great camera. I need to get a camera on my computer. But I was willing to just sort of jump in. And I thought, even if I have 5 listeners, I don't care. This is cool. I'm starting something new. It's making me feel, like it's giving me that inner fire again. And to this day, I still don't have the amount of listeners I want, but it's about so much more than that. I love doing it. It's connected me to amazing women like you, women that I wouldn't have even met outside of this new project. So it's bringing back so many things, so many positive things that honestly, like the numbers or number of listeners, those don't really even matter to me necessarily. I've started writing articles based on it being asked to be a speaker at different conferences. So it's just really kind of generated its own firepower. So I would say for people, just jump in. Don't worry. And then you know what? If it doesn't work in a couple months, you're back to where you were when you started. The worst thing that happens is you're not doing it anymore, which
exactly. And I'll even add on, I look at it from the perspective of like you're further along than you were when you started, because you're building the resiliency to try something new.
Completely. Oh, and let's talk about trying something new too. I feel like by the time I'm 45, so I feel like by the time we're in our 40s,
I'm 43,
like honestly,
so 42.
Yeah. Don't make yourself older now, lady. Just keep it.
I'm 42. Okay.
But honestly, so many of my friends, when I launched, we had a party and everyone was so supportive. And they were like, I can't believe you could do this. I can't believe you did this. We stop trying new things. Somewhere along the way, most of us stop trying new things because we're afraid.
Mm-hmm.
And trying something new for me, like you're saying, wading into new territory, that thought of maybe being embarrassed that's been like maybe the best experience of all through all of this, is just finding that feeling again of starting something new. I think it's so fun. It's so scary, but it's so exciting. I mean, and that's really the fire we're talking about.
And being yourself, like, being like, when I love, by the way, I love following you on LinkedIn. So anybody on LinkedIn, or if you're not on LinkedIn and you're thinking about getting on LinkedIn, it's not just like boring suits, right? It's not just business. There are fun people that you can follow on there that make business fun and work fun.
Yeah.
When I see your name pop up, I know it's going to be something light or something fun or something.
Oh, thank you.
Bullying, right? Because it can get really heavy. And I just feel like that's super important. And it's important to, you're making me think, like when I first started the Closet series, I had some of my friends on. I was, but it started because I wanted to spread the word of small businesses in our community because of COVID. I was like, what can I do? Okay, I want to shine a light.
That's awesome.
So they'll stay afloat. And I started at my linen closet. So then it moved on and just grew organically. But I had a friend reach out to me from a clip of a video. I was promoting one of the episodes. And one of my friends reached out to me and was like, I can't believe you put that out there. Like, weren't you kind of like, it was so informal. And I was like, that's me. Like, I'm not It was like, and to be honest, it was when I was looking out the window that's right here, and there was a bag floating, and it was in like April of COVID, and I was getting really sad and just kind of vulnerable. And I just started no, it was a balloon and it was floating, and I saw it leave the car, and I was like, oh my God, this little kid, like in the middle of our interview, I'm like, this little kid just floated the balloon. And my friend started dying laughing because she knew who I am. She just knew
who you are. Yeah.
And then I was like, I feel like the guy in American Beauty who videotaped the bag. That's what
I was totally thinking that. As you said that, I'm like, the total bag in, yes, I know exactly the scene you're talking about.
So, but the point is, after that went out, people were like, I love it. I love how light it is. I love how real it is. And it's not for everybody. So it's just, when you're truer to you, you're going to draw the people who are meant to be in your camp, right?
Completely.
It's just how
totally.
It goes. Yeah.
And that's like, even going back to LinkedIn, it's funny, about a year and a half ago, almost like right when I started Carearing, I used to post like a bunch of client news and PR and blah, blah, blah. And like, no one cares, right? No one cares. And so then I started, I had gone to a conference, and I was before COVID. This was February of last year. This was right before everything shut down. And I saw so many of my friends, and I was just so excited and thrilled to be there. And I wrote basically on LinkedIn a love letter to the industry and to my colleagues and to my friends, and just was talking about how happy I'd been at this conference. And I think it got like 90 likes, but the beauty is I didn't put it out there to get 90 likes. I was finally kind of authentically showing up on LinkedIn about how I really feel, and people were responding. So yeah. I think that's a good example of like, I went from 2 likes to 90, and it was just me being me on a social media site.
Absolutely.
So yeah.
So it's so, and I'm going to jump on this because I feel like your card of don't involve yourself with whack shit. I mean, I'm just going to, I'm going to reference this as much as possible. It's just so great.
It's spiritual AF cards. I'm getting these after this.
But the thing is that, yes, when you're genuinely yourself, there's going to be a connection innately.
Yeah.
I always say, like, you can smell bullshit like blood.
Yes.
Like we just are that way. We're wired that way. Even if we're like, I want to believe this person, but there's something in me that's off. The other great thing on the flip of that I heard from a friend of mine, and I was like, it's so true, is you may get connections from people who have never even liked or comment. Like it's I think you and I even had a connection like that. Like I was just like, oh Lord, okay, cool. And just don't know.
No, we did.
Right? I mean, it's like, you just keep going. As long as you believe, and it can get really, it's not that, because this is what I feel like you're saying. It's not that the likes you're aiming for the likes, but they do reaffirm that you're reaching people. Like I was like, I want to know I'm reaching people.
Yes.
And so there's this weird kind of love-hate with it, because you don't want to be swayed by it, but at the same time, you're kind of like, is this getting out to anybody? And so it's,
I think you find that you're hitting your mark, right? Yeah. So it's not the it is the engagement, because you're excited about the engagement of other people, but you're like, oh, wow, my message is really finding a home. Like people are really resonating with what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And I did find you that way. What's interesting about that is a friend of mine posted an article you'd written on LinkedIn. And because it was my friend, I got a notification. I read the article and was like, okay, I need to find out more about this woman. Who is this woman and what's her voice? And so you and I would never have been connected if you hadn't put out the article that you put out. And so, yeah, it's a perfect example of the kismet in the universe.
Like when you and I spoke for your podcast, it was just like kindred. It was just like we speak the same language. We were able to jump right in. It felt like we had already had 5 conversations.
Yeah, I agree.
And I just feel like there's something to be said about like when I hear you say set your soul on fire, I'm such a visual person that I'm like picturing this just woman, like just literal fire, like coming out, and it's just, but like pure light, and I love that idea, because we all have that. So
yes,
I would love for you to talk about like any rituals that you have that allows you to consistently, let's start with this, rituals that you have that allow you to consistently have like an inspiring routine or life.
Yeah. So I'm very, very consistent and like intentional about this. Every single day I have this routine. And it's starting to get a little interrupted. I have 2 teenage kids and they're back at school. So what's interesting is now I'm taking them to school, and it's like, okay, how did this routine happen during COVID when we all were home and I didn't have to take my kids to school? So that's what's interesting. Now it's like, how do I keep this going? But every single morning I sit down and I write 5 gratitudes. I write the 10 things that I'm working toward, like a 10-year goal. Okay. And then the 1 to 2 goals that I'm going to do that day to work toward them. And they're small. The goals are like, for instance, the goal today is like be on the So to Speak, be on the Closet Series podcast.
Yeah.
This goal is moving me toward, getting my message out to the world. So they don't have to be like, today I'm going to write a book and get published. They're like, I'm going to complete 1 page of my manuscript today. So I do that, I meditate. And then, like I said, that I think the biggest thing is just the gratitude. It's so awesome. And I look back, I've been doing this now for 15 months, I think. And it's so great because I look back and the goals are, like I said, like Google how to start a podcast. So that's really beautiful because you see how far you've come in such a short amount of time. But then the gratitudes are so beautiful because you can tell exactly what's going on from my past gratitudes. During the height of COVID, it was like, I'm grateful for the fire in the fireplace. I'm grateful for my dog and I mean, they were so simple, you know, they were just very simplified. But now as we kind of are opening up and things are opening up, I can tell by looking at my gratitudes what's most important to me and what I need to ensure is in my life. So the things for my gratitudes is time with family, time with friends, time out in nature, and connection. Like those are my must-haves. And so it's just, I don't know, I think that daily journaling gives you an opportunity to look back, and you definitely see some trends throughout that make you happy. And so then it's on me to put those things into my life, right? It's not my husband's job, it's not my kids' job, it's not my colleagues' jobs. It's on me to ensure I have those daily things make me happy. And also just not feeling guilty. Here's my other huge message. I've so much time has been taken to do the podcast and find the guests and ask the interviews, and I love it all. And I'm just done feeling guilty about stuff that sets my soul on fire. If it's something that lights me up, it's worth it. The time is worth it.
And it naturally will, your kids, your husband, your community, your friends will inevitably feel from that. They will benefit from that because you're showing up better.
Yeah, it's so, I have to tell you, this is such a cool story in regard to that. So the whole like supporting women, and I have a group of women that I've built, like a tribe of women in my automotive, I work in the automotive industry, and it's like 98% men, right? So there's very few women. But I have this tribe of females that I've cultivated over the last several years. They're very supportive. They're amazing. And one of the women came up with an idea for a Galentine's week. And so we all sent each other like little secret Santa, like Valentine's and notes of encouragement. I got little coffee cards. And I just at the end of the week was like, I created this. This came from me creating this tribe of women who all feel the same way about supporting each other. And so it's really just like whatever you put out there, this whole theme of what we're talking about, you get back. I just am such a believer in it. And so me finding these women in this kind of tribe empowered 10 other women to, you know, get gifts and notes of encouragement and words of encouragement. And I just think it all flows.
It does flow. And I'm hearing so much too, that there's so much still, even though I do feel like we're growing, the women are growing in regards to putting themselves a little bit ahead of people in a way that benefits everybody else. Because when you're thinking about the whole self-care and the whole, you know, feeling selfish and all of that, what you're speaking to is so much more what I call like soul care. It's not just getting a manicure or getting a pedicure.
Oh my gosh.
Or getting a coffee. I mean, even getting a coffee with a friend can be soul care or self-care combo. Yeah. But I think it's so important that you're saying like you stopped feeling guilty about it, and inevitably other people benefited. You created this entire community. And so, and like, look at you, you're like glowing when you say that too. It's
I just love the idea. I just love the idea. And I love soul care. That is like, you know what, forget self-care. Let's start talking soul care. That's so much more important.
It's so much more important. And I want to say too, like when you were talking about the gratitude list, which I love, that it's to me, that was like gratitude was one of those buzzwords for a while, like mindfulness and blessing. And but gratitude, I feel like, has really gotten its roots. Like it's like this deep, it's not just a passing thing. It's once you're practicing it more, you actually see your perspective is shifting because you're looking for, grateful for, versus
you're so right.
And you're so
well. That's like what I was saying. Like when we were in the midst of the pandemic, there would be mornings I literally would be looking around like, okay, what, you know. And sometimes it was like I'm grateful for my hot cup of coffee and the time to create a gratitude list. You know, sometimes it was kind of hard to come up with something. But I think what it teaches you is you can always look for gratitude. Always.
Yes. And it's and also like you were saying, the beginning of the pandemic, you had moments where you were like, oh my, and people may be there now. And at the beginning of the pandemic, you might have been like those people that thrive in chaos, like let's go time, let's do it. And so there's also no right or wrong way to pandemic.
Yes.
there's no competition on who's doing it better. Like no one's going to win an award when we get out of this.
I think you're so right. And what's interesting about that is even like, so at the beginning of the pandemic, it hit me really hard. I'm very extroverted. I get a lot of my energy from other people. And all of a sudden that was just gone. And like, a week. In like a week's time, everything had shut down.
Yeah.
So I had a really hard time. And then I kind of got into this groove where I was like, oh my gosh, this is great. I'm journaling. There's time for all these creative projects. I was eating, like my hair was on fire. I was eating way too much. But then I started and I was like doing pretty good. And then schools started opening up. And actually, I started going through another little dip only about like a month ago, because I think what happened is things started to open back up.
Yeah.
It reminded me of all the things we've lost over the last year. And I kind of went through this like mourning stage. It was really interesting. So to your point of like, everybody's going through different stages at different times during this thing. You'd think as things were opening up, I'd feel this like sense of like promise.
Right.
And I actually went through a little bit of this like mourning for losing a year of the things that made me so happy. Well, and I've learned the last year I've done like also, I mean, talk about the gratitudes of the pandemic. I've done a ton of reading and a lot of soul searching. And I was like, okay, this is grief. What I'm feeling is grief. And I actually need to just experience it. I'm a huge before this, I was a huge advocate of running. So I would run from grief. I would run from any scary emotions to a friend, to go have drinks, to go have wine, and pandemic kind of laid all that bare. And so I just remember thinking like, okay, just experience what you're feeling is grief and just feel it and experience it. And sure enough, I mean, about a week where I was kind of down in the dumps and I was mourning. And then I just kind of picked myself up and it's like, okay, here we are. This is life. This is where we are right now in our moment. And I moved on. And I think just being able to kind of experience and like move through those feelings, and like you're saying, not feel guilty and know that they're okay, but move through just helped so tremendously.
It does. And I consider myself like a skeptical coach because I think I may even told you that on your pod, because I get very protective of anybody who's coming into a space where there's mental health associated with it. I think it's super important to be able to feel how you're feeling without falling victim to society grouping it as good or bad. Because then if we're feeling grief and you're used to being so optimistic, chances are, if I want you to speak to this, if it's resonating with you, you might even feel worse and then you shame your feeling because Laurie's known as being optimistic and she's known as being upbeat, and then you're not, and then you're like, I got to get that. So did that happen at all? What's that? Yeah.
No, totally. I think what's interesting about that time for me is I tend to be a person that like, if I'm feeling sad, then my husband's like, we'll be in the middle of an argument and you'll get on the phone and be like, hi, how are you doing? How are things going? And I'm like, I know I do that. Like, it's so bad. I'm able to kind of like flip it on and off. And so that week, what I really try to do is friends have contacted me. I'm like, I'm having a really hard week, and just name the fact that I was having a really hard time. And I think what you do when you do that is you allow people to be there for you. And I allowed people to be there for me in a way that they maybe never have been for before. I have been there for a lot of people in that way, but I was allowing my friends and family to be there for me in a way that I had not allowed before. And they totally showed up and were beautiful about it. So I allowed people to show up for me in a new way, which was really cool.
That is so powerful too, because I am similar to you where I do lean more towards being optimistic. I have moments like anybody, but it normalizes you. So there's a helpful thing too. Like somebody who you might think has it all together, who actually reaches out for help. You're like, oh, people love giving. They love giving. So the fact that they're able to support you strengthens them, makes you look more human, creates a stronger trust.
Yeah.
And it's just such a beautiful, back to your word, the connection. It's wonderful.
Well, and vulnerability is really hard for me, probably for you too. I feel like we're soul sisters, as you said. So we probably but being vulnerable is like extremely hard for me. And so I just think I remember someone telling me like, but the more vulnerable you are, the more beautiful it becomes. And that is so true, because it's deeper connection. The more vulnerable you are, the more deeply connected you are with the people that you love and who are there to support you. And so this is my lesson, is really just like leaning into vulnerability, because it's really, really hard for me. But it has just created these like deeper connections with friends and family that's been really helpful this last year.
I want you just to highlight your podcast. We brushed upon it, but I just would love to hear on how you got into it. But just what are you hoping to do with it, and just fill us in on
I love
guest
that. Yeah.
and,
So what's so cool about Carearing is when I first started it, I really like it's morphed into something different than when I started, which is great. When I first started it, I really feel like I couldn't find this many resources where people, women specifically, were talking about how much they love their career. So I love what I do. I love my job. I love working. I love having a career. You know, my kids, when they were born, I didn't stop working. I continued working. And as they've gotten older, I hope that I'm showing them that loving my career and loving them at the same time is wonderful. And it's what makes me who I am. So that's really the nucleus for Carearing was, I want to find other women who can encourage women that it's okay to love your career and that you can actually love your family and your career just as much as the same time. And so we have gone that way, but more of what I'm realizing of this as I talk to more people is it's not so much about the hustle. It's more about like, that was kind of like my vision, but we're all such individuals. And the women I talk to are all doing it in different ways. So what's beautiful, what's so cool is what it's morphed into is how are we all juggling it in our own individual ways? Mm-hmm. And so, you know, I was thinking the other day, I was laughing, I'm looking at all the episodes, like, is this just every single one about self-care? Am I basically creating like a different episode about self-care every single time? And in a way, it is. Because what it is it's women talking about how they create their own self-care or soul care. I love soul care. Mm-hmm. How they create their own soul care to make it work. And so, yeah, just all of these kind of ideas around like the guilt associated with it and how do you juggle it. And we've had moms on, actually, I shouldn't say moms. We've had females on who have talked about having young kids, going back to corporate America after baby, you know, getting how to get speaking engagements, like things as tactical as that too. We've been coming up talking about imposter syndrome. I have a woman who's a 3-time best-selling author who talks about not feeling like she's enough. And when people talk to her, they're like, oh, how's that cute little project you're working on? This is a woman who's published 3 books.
Wow.
So, you know, just all the themes are around basically finding our way in life as career women and knowing that our family is also giving enough.
And I love how you're doing it in a way that you're aware that, yeah, the theme might be self-care or soul care, but each one of us is offering insight to a listener. Like you could listen to every single episode, you're going to get something. You're like creating this like huge toolkit and you're allowing we get to pick what tools we want to put in it. And then you might need one time. And then as your kids get older or when they're out of the house or career, whatever it is, you'll be like, oh my gosh, I remember that one episode that Laurie had this woman on. So I love how it's not the same for everybody at all.
Yeah.
And I love the idea that I love it. And I think that the women that you've had on, the episodes that I've heard, they're so strong and there's a levity to them. I'm so into just, we can get so serious when it has anything to do with personal growth or personal development. Like there needs to be some levity. So I love that you're building this sense of community where women can come together. I think I mean, because here's the thing. And to be honest, I haven't pinpointed it with you. There's something different about how you're doing it. And I don't know what it is. My thought on it now is that it's just an energy that you're putting out that's connecting us in different ways. Because there are a lot of podcasts that have females on. There's a lot of podcasts that are covering similar topics, if not the same type. But yours has I don't know, there's just a different feel to it that
I really love that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. That's so wonderful to hear.
Well, I mean, really, we have limited time. Like you're going to listen, you want to listen to what resonates with you, because then you're going to have to listen to a few different episodes of a podcast to see if you're with it.
Sure.
But I just feel like you just have, there's something unique about your delivery. So
thank you so much. I love hearing that. And I don't know what it is either. I'm so happy that there is something there, but I'd like to think that it's just this sort of idea, again, getting back to like connecting, so now we're all like, what I would like to create is this large tribe and know like you're connected, you're supported, and we're cheering you on, right? I just want this big cheerleader group of women actually. And I guess that's when we did the Valentine's, at the end of that week, I was like, wow, look at what we've created. We've created this group of women that hold each other up, which is so beautiful and amazing.
And never gets old. Like we need more and more and more. So that is really what it is. It's this sense of camaraderie and community that
Yes.
you're creating that is really visceral. So keep it up.
Thank you. Thank you.
Laurie, thank you so much. When people want to learn more about you, where can they go?
Probably best is either LinkedIn, so at Laurie Halter. I'm on Instagram under at Carearing, or just go to Apple Podcasts and look up Carearing, like you said, REAR, because that's the rearing part of the family and career. Thank you so much for having me on. I've just loved it.